Hello everyone and welcome to something a bit different here. Today I will be going over my first base in Satisfactory and how I believe this is one of the most easiest way to complete the game and get the golden nugget, if not the easiest. Basically this is me and this is the golden nugget I gotten, and I will be showing you the factory and trying to go over what the ideas behind it is. So yeah, actually let's just go have a look with the decouple camera. So the entire idea is that you can't do that. Okay, great. Great. That building in Satisfactory can be a bit harrowing, knowing to understand how many materials you need and how to scale up and getting the materials to where you actually need them. The entire idea behind this factory is that you don't have to think about your transportation of the different materials in order like between buildings or how you scale them up and so on and so forth. The entire idea is that the factory here is built in an L shape. In this part of the L, this is where the resources arrive at the factory, here on this side, and this is where the factory products are output. And the idea is when your resources arrive, you build whatever you can with those resources in one layer. You make the outputs of that layer over here, and then you go upwards. So you never have to try to have some sort of spaghetti and move all the parts around and try to figure out how to logically combine them all. No, every output goes in and you increase the height of these transport belts out into industrial containers over here. I have added depot uploaders for everything that I wanted to have a depot uploaded, and you just build your line of constructors needing the resources out here. So this is the first level. This is where all the iron comes in and is transformed into the three things that you can make from iron. That is the iron rods, the screws, and the iron plates. Now you might be wondering why only so few screws, because screws are an item that takes up more space than what it is produced from. So instead of transporting screws to other layers, I transport the thing that produces the screws to another layer and turn that into screw on site, so as to have the highest amount of resource density on each of the transport belts. And this is then the next layer. The next layer is taking in iron, and from the levels below, it's taking in iron bars. That's because I can use them to make screws. And in this case, because of an alternative recipe, I'm taking in rubber. I'll get back to why the rubber is here. Again, I have 4 levels of input, always building upwards, always stacking like this. We split out and then we produce our items down here. And I make these are blueprints, but you don't need to make it. I just make it so that I can endlessly scale these down here. All the outputs goes in this line and all the inputs goes in the line. There's no mixing these two, because that slows down the ability of your scale up, because you have to think and worry about how this all goes. And yes, I'm using some alternative recipes right now. And even though this factory is not running that fast, this factory has taken me all the way through the game. So again, we are producing 2 new items, which is the reinforced plates and the rotors, and then we go up because we can't make anything else with our current resources. The next level is where I make things that came from copper. You could have switched places between this level and some of the others. And the same here. So copper wire is not a thing that I like to transport further out than here, because copper wire is less energy dense than just copper in general. The copper sheets, however, and copper cables are the same energy density as these or lower, so those are the ones who've been transported. And I just make like copper wire into copper ingots into copper wire, then into cable at this level, and that's all this level does. It does it a lot because you need a lot of wires, and yeah, again, I used a blueprint for just like one constructor, and then I just attached it into another constructor blueprint, and you need 1 to 2, and then I made the cables. And this is just the entire philosophy of this build, is that you keep going up like here, and also you keep, when you add the new resources, you make sure that you add them on a new line of foundation, so that you never cross over, so that you can always attach another splitter and go upward with the resource stance. You never have to like pipe these across each other or intermingle anything. Everything goes in one line up for all of this. And yeah, this was some of my early builds. You can do this a lot prettier, which you can see for this one with the splitters. And I have also made an even better version in another game, but this is like the first one. I do bring in some resources. It's just easier to get in from other places. Like when you make steel, you might as well make it into the steel pipe and the steel beam, because they're so much more energy dense than the steel ingots. But you don't have to. You could build it all on site if that's what you wanted. You could even melt the steel on site. And again, we are using the rotors, the iron plates, and the copper sheets from below. I am bringing in plastic. I will explain why in a little later. And I'm bringing in concrete as well, and copper ingots and iron plates. And you can go through this and see that I then produce everything that these items can make for me at this level, and then I belt these out into each of their own container, so that they can move upwards. Yeah, and I also added in portable miners for automation. You don't have to, but I wanted to not have to build them myself. And as you can see, this factory isn't even like running at that high capacity, but it was able to support me all the way through. Is there anything special here? Oh yeah, and I also bring in Caterium ore to make some byproducts here. As you can see, I build it so that I make quick wire on site, because it goes from 1 to 5, and it takes up so many more belts to transport the quick wire rather than belt this in. And again, I have made a small blueprint that makes this this setup easy to produce and scale up, but you can just make it yourself. And yeah, that's pretty much how the philosophy goes, and everything goes out, everything comes in on a layer above. This is such an easy way to build it, and you can keep infinitely scaling this up, because you have the entire row out here that you can just keep building as long as you want, because there's never going to be anything in the way of your big factory in this direction, due to the way the L shape is made. But of course, the higher up you get, the fewer machines most likely you are going to need in order to build the individual parts. And again, it's just the same here. And yes, it is a very tall build, but you can build this from as soon as you actually get these stackable conveyor belts, because that will enable you to climb as high as you want. It does get a lot easier once you get the hover pack, but you don't need it in essence. And again, I have a blueprint for all of the manufacturers that goes either with 3 or 4 belts. And then I add in another blueprint for supporting constructors when I need to transform essentially high density materials into less density materials for constructors, which is especially noticeable when you look at making screws for these heavy modular frames, because they need a lot of machines in order just to support one for the screws. But instead of transporting the screws, which would be even harder to do, I transport the ingots because I got a recipe for that. But you can also use the rods, and the same logic will apply here, that the rods are less take up less space than the screws would. So I'll just belt it in. You can, if you wanted to do, just belt it in with screws, but you will have to have more than one full belt of screws in theory, depending on how much output you want. You might notice there's also some water going up here, and we'll get to that. So essentially this repeats itself. I'm just going up each layer to see if there's something I've forgotten. This repeats itself and keeps going up. Whenever I need a resource that I'm already taking up, I just split it off, add another conveyor lift, and it goes up. You can do this a lot prettier if you want to with conveyor holds, but I haven't really started with that when I began, and this works just as fine. This is not a pretty factory by any standard. This is ugly, but it works very well. And yes, again here I also I take in, where is it? I take in aluminium, which I bring in, and I will go over what I actually bring in from outside as well. You could make aluminium in this factory, but it is anything that needs fluids, almost anything that needs fluids, is easier to produce offsite and bring in, because usually they are very simple processes that don't need other inputs than the fluids or something that's nearby. But yeah, I do bring in the aluminium ingots, and then I turn them into the sheets and the casings. And I build all of the space parts here as well, and bring them down. And you could move them automatically down to the space elevator. I did not do that. I moved them by hand. And this goes on for more and more levels. I added an elevator for the fun of it. You could also just make a ladder. That would totally give you the same functionality in order to go up when you don't have a hover pack. As soon as you get the hover pack, it sort of becomes the easiest way to traverse in the heights. And it's also very easy when you go through all this to look at where are your limitations, where are your bottlenecks, and this is where you can then use sloops or power shots in order to increase this, increase what you have to produce. And I actually also produce, this is one of the more alternative builds where I produce and instantly put into the cloud some of the gear that I want for myself that I don't really need to put into the formula of belting down through. You can do it, but I just didn't find a need to it, so I just did it like this. And again, I do also get in the smoker's parser by the same logic that it requires a byproduct from fluids, so I didn't build on site, but you could essentially do it. As you can see here, I actually brought in water and nitrogen nitrogen gas to make one of the later game products, the cooling system, and I just added pumps to get the water up. And the gas doesn't need pumps, so you don't need to add that in order to move it all this way up here. And you don't have to worry about running out of space, because you can build very, very tall in this game without worrying about any complications at all. It makes it a lot easier to do this. It makes you not have to think about transportation and any logistics about moving around. As you can see, we're now getting to a place where we don't have enough resources to have more than one machine, essentially. Yeah. And this just keeps going all the way. I even have particle accelerators, very noisy. And all the end game things are made here. I do bring in the fixed tricons. In my other factory I made in another server, I built that on site, which I actually would probably recommend. There's no reason to bring them in unless your factory doesn't produce enough of the resources you want to turn into them, but you could easily build it on site. I do bring in the copper powder rather than creating that on site, but that's just because it has a huge requirement of raw products. But you could again build it on site and just pipe it up, and whenever you needed more of it, you could just make more factories or bring in more of the raw materials down here, as long as you keep extending the line wherever you need it. And most of the resources I bring in, I did after I unlocked drones. As you can see, I'll go down and have a look at those, because you will come to a point that the resources you get in from out elsewhere, you only need drones, because the amount you require is so little that you don't have to worry about using belts or trains to get in. You just do it with drones. Here, there's a little bit, like this is the second last platform, and I did change a bit on this one, because you need these pipelines with excited photonic matter, and you need this dark matter residue. In order to do all of this, this here has a dark matter residue output, which I just use as a basis for whenever I need it as an input. And if I ever ran out of the dark matter residue, I simply would just build these, because they don't require anything from that production chain, and I sink leftovers of these, and this is how I can handle all this. And I use valves here to ensure there's no flow back, and I have had no problems with getting the flow out from any of these builds. So I can just pipe these back and forth. This is the only thing I pipe back and forth, so to speak, in one of these final levels. And again, I use the exact same logic, building in things that I need and building out what I produce from out here. Diamonds is also one of the things that I get in from outside. I tried to do it on site in another playthrough, and that worked just as well. It just requires so much coal that you would probably need to have another belt of that as well, getting into the factory. But you can do it. And again, this takes us all the way up to the last level. I built everything downstairs. Yes, it is very long that these belts have to travel, but this ensures that there is absolutely no weaving or belting or any kind of logic that you have to consider when just moving down this long L every time. And it just makes it so simple. This then produces the final part, and once I was done with the last part of the space elevator, getting all that, all I simply did was, by the end, this final part, the ballistic warp drive, I put it in an awesome sink. And that was what gave me enough coupons in order to get the golden nugget as well. And yeah, this is very simple. I will show you some of the few things that I did here, did bring in to this factory rather than producing on site. What I would argue that you could produce everything on site if you wanted to. And I guess if this video gets enough interest, I might do a video where I actually produce everything on site and show you how it could be done. This is my drone base where I brought in turbo fuel because I wanted turbo ammunition. I also, once I did that, used the turbo fuel to fuel the others before I got rocket fuel. And I bring in fabric from fabric as well. I needed that for gas mask and so on. I bring in time crystals, and I bring in diamonds, and I bring in these trigons as well. Everything comes from these drones. And yeah, that is all I really needed from them. I have a few drones that this brings rocket fuel to the rest of them, and then I have a few drones that actually takes things from this factory and move them out, and that's just because I wanted to finish up after I was done. When I needed more power, I wanted to go out and make a nuclear reactor, and it requires some of these items. Again, in such small amounts that you can actually just move it by drone, and so I wanted to do that and not have to think about it. So this is the drone base. I do melt things before I get them factory. I don't think you need to, but you can. The advantage is that you don't need to have an extra layer, but you have plenty of space. And the disadvantage is you can't really make all the alternative recipes here because I don't get the ore in. As the same as for concrete, I built that in as well, but you could build in both water and limestone and you'll probably have a better recipe for all this. And you never have to worry, I forgot to show that, you never have to worry about this building ever getting too tall. On the top of this building here, I built the ladder in order to get the achievement for getting to the highest point of the world, and it is so tall that you could build 2 or maybe 5 of these factories on top of each other and not reach the end. This again here is just me building out resources that I use primarily for my nuclear reactor because it needs a lot of different things. And again, it's really easy. I just take it from the output, put it down to this level, and put it into these drone bays that I can scale infinitely in this direction as well. So what do I actually bring in? Well, I bring in all the oil products, I bring in the copper powder, I bring in the quartz and the silica, and the steel, and the aluminum ingots and the caterium ore. You could easily build all these on site, it's just that I didn't get this idea before a while into my game, so most of this is just being created where I build it, because I didn't need any of the resources in order to build anything else in the factory. And I'm just gonna show you. So I also don't have the power here. You could again, but the amount of water is just a bit annoying in order to get it, because fluids aren't that easy to move, but you could do it. And again, I would argue that if you're struggling with it, just pump all the water you need in because you got the space. Don't worry about that, that's just me, my silly thing. So yeah, I have my first coal plant here where I just built the coal in to make it, because all you need is water and coal. You don't have to worry about how to get all this to work in cooperation with the rest of your factories. And then I'm going to show you my oil power and my oil processing, which is one of the few things that I actually take in from outside rather than building it on premise. And that's because fluids are a bit more of a hassle because of the requirement for pumps, while belts are really easy to use because belts, you can build belts anywhere. Yeah, I built it through like a sky bridge and so on, and you don't have to worry about power for the belts. You don't have to worry about how the belts are being used in order to move up through heights, because you get all that for free. So let's go have a look at my oil place, and I will show you how I did that, because that is almost the same logic as I did with the factory. Honestly, it is a little bit more lazy in construction, but again, building so that you get your resources upwards in these easy to build lines, so you can transport out how much ever you need. And the only reason that I don't necessarily recommend doing it in one place is that fluids are hard to move. But as you can see here, I just built this. What we have here are 2 lines that essentially just make plastic and rubber, because that is what then gives me my residual heavy oil residue, sorry, and it just is made directly from the oil. I can then use that, the spare of this, again, this was my first attempt, it's pretty ugly, to make fuel, which I did by just pumping it up, building a great big platform, and as many refiners as I needed to make fuel and burn off the excess in fuel generators, which gives you power. And I chose, and still believe that it's fine to have it here, because the transporting the oil fluid by train or any other mechanism is kind of annoying with the limits of how fuel goes. And here I also produce my rocket fuel. I'm so lucky that there is sulfur and coal nearby. I just build it in, use it to make a rocket fuel. I skip a little from the top over to my own personal supply, and for using it to power the fuel drones wherever I want in the world using this setup. Yes, and I bring in these the containers for the fuel by drone as well. And this is just my fuel power plant, because rocket fuel scales so very well, and this crater is also magnificent for using this. And again, everything that's not a fluid, so to speak, is built in the main factory, but here, because this is all the fluid works, and it doesn't really need and doesn't synergize with anything else made in the other factory, I just built it here. The same logic, so to speak, you build upwards and outwards in these easy to expand configurations and using blueprints. So yeah, and in the end I take plastic, I take rubber, I actually even took some coal, because I wanted to bring in some coal for the main factory, and there was a lot of coal here, and smokeless powder, because all these use the oil byproduct somehow, in some way, of shape or form. Now to the last few things that, again, I didn't really need to build them away, but that's just how it ended up. And because it was so late game, I didn't really I didn't really consider putting it in the large factory, most of it. And the first thing we're going to go buy is my diamond production, because it needs so much coal that I just found a place where there is coal nearby. Build it all in, because like all of these lines in here, it's only two of these particle accelerators to make the diamonds, and then because diamonds are used to make time crystals as well, is the only ingredient for it. I just make the time crystals on site, and both of them are then moved by drones, because you need them in such low amounts. You can easily just transport this by drones. And again, I just build in the raw resources, put it all on a single belt, and repurpose it into the diamonds and move it out by the line. The train only picks up the oil products and the aluminium, as I'm going to show you here. Everything else you can handle by drones easily. And again, this is not an efficient factory necessarily. This is a very easy factory. It's great. I'm probably sure that so many can tell me how to build this much more efficiently. Again, I wanted these fluid tanks so that I can get rocket fuel out. I just put it on a drone. And this is where I mine from a single mine using actually only a Mark II. Two mines using Mark II mines, though overclocked, in order to get all of my aluminium from this. Coal goes in, and I did use the recipe in the beginning where you got silica out, and then you could use a priority merger in order to get it in. But I found a secondary one where I built in some silica to make the aluminium here on site. And yes, the silica is made from a quartz field. That's not really that interesting. So this is all you need in order to win the game. And yeah, This might seem like a lot when you're looking at it, but what I really want to underline is that the main thing and all of the movement of the moving parts are mainly inside of this one main factory. So you don't have to consider how do I move things around, how do I scale it up, which kind of construction building or layers or limitation of your belts, because you can just build these lines out, fill them out with resources, and once there's not enough resources, you're just having some empty constructions by the end, and it doesn't matter because you have infinite resources in the game, so you don't have to worry about wasting it, so to speak. And this will take you all the way through the entire game. It will take you to the golden knot if you want to, because of the need is the resource requirements are not that high in order to go through the game. You could easily upscale to a much better, much bigger factory using all the resources in the map. I did not. This was my first attempt and it got me through the game. And you don't really, it's just a show of how little you need actually. It seems overwhelming, but if you just build like one layer at a time, you will get through this game a lot faster and a lot easier than you need. Even the train that I made basically just drew a long line through the entire map. You could also just do those belts. A train has only the convenience as a bonus that could make it better than a belt, but you're still limited to how many resources you can move by belts, so you don't really need it. And the last thing I sort of want to debunk, or rather show how easy it can be, is the nuclear reactor. Yes, and this is my Caterium mine. I just, from one mine was enough to run this entire factory, and I just belted it in. I started in this biome as well. Yeah. Now, for the nuclear reactor, I chose to move in uranium ore by train, but you actually need so little of it that I could easily see you doing all of this by drones. And every single other resource that I needed for the reactors are being supplied by drones. This does require one alternative recipe, so you don't have to deal that much with fluids. But you can make this nuclear reactor just using this drone, because you need so few resources, a lot fewer than you think, in order to make uranium fuel, and even in order to make plutonium fuel. This setup here, it uses the reactors to create power using uranium. Then it takes all the uranium waste, makes that into plutonium, and from that it makes the rest into fission. All of this, it takes up a lot of space, but it doesn't take up a lot of resources. And since I have an ocean below me, I can just pipe in the water for each of the reactors individually. And you can do all this with drones. This is to say that you don't have to worry that much about getting resources in through trains and thinking about all this logistically. Everything can be done by drones. And this essentially produces a shit ton of power. But a side note is that I didn't even need this in order to complete the game. I made this after the game was done because I wanted to see if I could get it to work. And it takes a little time because most of these things are too large to blueprint. But once you get it going, it is quite simple. There's a few things about byproducts, like this secondary thing here. It's a closed circuit, so you actually have to fuel it with water, and then it will run itself around in a circle with the water. So you don't have to bring in water, and then there is the nitrogen gas, which I just built an insanely long pipe, piped it in, and that's it. So by drones and one pipe in a place where there's a lot of water, you can make your own power plant quite easily. It takes very few machines. None of these have added power shards, sloops, or anything, and you can make tons of power extremely easily. And I think that's about all. If there's any questions to any builds that I have, or blueprints, or any things that I have made, or how I made it, and what my thoughts behind them were, you're more than welcome to ask a question. I will do my very best to answer them. I am by no means an expert in Satisfactory. This has been my very first game. I played it this year, so I don't really count myself as being an expert, but I managed to get all this up and running, getting through the game and getting all of the achievements using this one huge factory. And yes, I participated in the Christmas event as well. The last thing I might be able to show you is I do build the steel offsite and bring it in. I'm just going to show you that, and then I will be signing off for this video. And yeah, I just built hyperloops and belts. I didn't bother using trains or anything. Yeah. And I use the same logic here. I bring in the raw materials. This is not as pretty as I would like it to be. I bring in the raw materials. I have a blueprint for these foundries. And from these foundries, I bring out all the steel ingots. The steel ingots then go into, again, these lines here. You could do all of this in the main factory as well if that's what you wanted. I simply didn't think about that before after I made the steel, so I didn't do it like that way. And that's all. That's all you need in order to beat Satisfactory. I hope that this might give some people some ideas of how you can beat the game and get through it, and maybe lessen the idea of how difficult it is. You can get through this game a lot quicker and a lot easier than you think, because you can just build it in one big jumbo place, and it will work. It will take you through the game, and you can even get a 100% achievement, including the golden nugget. And that's all I got. I even started building some of the extra trophies as well. I hope you have enjoyed this video. If you want to see me actually start a new game and build this factory from scratch, I might do that in the near future. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. And then I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something from it. Have a good one. I hope to see you again next time.